60,000 people, one name, and a city that had absolutely no idea what was about to hit it. Stuttgart is known for Mercedes-Benz, for quiet sophistication, for being the kind of place where tennis crowds sit politely and applaud at the right moments. Nobody warned Stuttgart about what was coming, because on this particular day, the city didn't just host a tennis match. It got completely taken over. Picture this. Early morning, before the first serve had even been hit, the streets outside the stadium were already packed, not with your typical tennis crowd, not with the usual mix of European fans clutching programs and sipping coffee. These were Filipino fans. Thousands of them, then tens of thousands pouring in from every direction, draped in red, blue, and yellow, faces painted, flags raised, voices already loud and already proud. Some had flown in directly from Manila. Others came from London, Paris, Rome, cities scattered across Europe where Filipino communities have quietly built their lives far from home. Many of them had never attended a live tennis match in their lives. But that almost didn't matter, because they weren't just here for tennis. They were here for something that runs much deeper than sport. They were here for Alex. To understand why 60,000 people showed up in a German city for a young Filipino tennis player, you have to go back. You have to understand where she came from, what she sacrificed, and why her story resonates the way it does. Alex didn't arrive on the scene with fanfare. There were no billboards, no marketing campaigns, no carefully managed celebrity launch. What there was a young girl waking up before sunrise day after day, walking onto a court while most of the world was still asleep and putting in work that nobody was watching yet. The hours she spent training weren't glamorous. Repetition, sweat, the same drill run 50 times until it became instinct, then 50 more times after that. She traveled to tournaments in countries she'd never been to, faced opponents who had more resources, more coaching, more of everything that the traditional tennis world tends to hand to players from certain places and quietly withhold from others. She lost matches. She had hard days. There were moments where the gap between where she was and where she wanted to be must have looked impossibly wide. But here's the thing about Alex that you start to notice when you watch her closely. She doesn't carry doubt on her face. There's a stillness in her that most athletes spend their entire careers trying to find. She walks onto a court like she belongs there, not arrogantly, but with this quiet certainty that says she's done the work, she's prepared, and whatever happens next, she's ready to meet it. That quality, that inner steadiness, it's rare. And people recognize it even when they can't fully explain it. Fans didn't fall in love with Alex just because she wins. They fell in love with her because she represents something they want to believe in. That talent doesn't have a passport. That greatness doesn't only grow in certain zip codes. That a girl from the Philippines can stand on a court in the heart of Europe and belong there just as much as anyone else. So when word spread that she was playing in Stuttgart, the Filipino community across Europe didn't need much convincing. Group chats lit up, flight prices got checked, plans got made, and what started as quiet excitement turned into something much bigger than anyone expected, including probably Alex herself. Back to that morning outside the stadium. The energy building in those streets wasn't manufactured. Nobody hired a hype team. Nobody organized a flash mob. It was just pure, organic, deeply felt community pride spilling out onto German pavement. Drums appeared from somewhere. Chants started and then grew. Strangers who'd never met before were hugging each other because they'd come from the same hometown back in the Philippines, or because they'd both been following Alex since her junior days, or simply because they both felt the same thing and needed somewhere to put it. German locals stopped and stared. Some pulled out their phones, trying to figure out what was happening. A few of them genuinely asked if there was a football final going on nearby. Security teams that were used to orderly tennis crowds suddenly found themselves managing something they had no framework for. Because this wasn't a crowd, it was a movement. Inside the arena, the transformation was even more striking. Seats filled faster than projected. The usual atmosphere of a high-level tennis event, focused, appreciative, quiet between points, was completely replaced by something that felt closer to a concert or a championship football match. Or honestly, just a massive Filipino celebration that happened to have a tennis court in the middle of it. The moment Alex walked out, the stadium didn't just applaud. It detonated. Flags went up. Voices went up. The chanting was immediate and coordinated in the way that only happens when thousands of people feel exactly the same thing at exactly the same time. And watching her face as she walked out to that, it told you everything. She didn't look startled. She didn't look overwhelmed. She smiled, settled into it, and went to work. Because here's the other thing about Alex. Pressure doesn't shrink her. It seems to wake something up in her. Her opponent came ready. Make no mistake about that. This was not someone who was going to hand anything over. The tennis was sharp, physical, and unforgiving from the very first game. Long rallies that tested patience. Serves that demanded a fast reaction. Points that swung multiple times before they were decided. The kind of match that exposes any weakness in your game and any crack in your mental armor. And for stretches of it, things weren't easy for Alex. There were moments where the pressure of the situation, the crowd, the stakes, the sheer weight of representing so many people all at once could have started to pull at her focus. It can happen to anyone. That voice in your head that starts calculating instead of just competing. The slight tightening in your chest when a point goes the wrong way and the crowd noise shifts. The match wasn't clean. It was messy in the way that meaningful matches always are. But every time it looked like the momentum might tip, every time you expected to see her shoulders drop even slightly, she came back. Not with a flourish, not with some dramatic gesture, just with the next shot, played with the same belief as the one before it. She chased down balls she had no right to reach. She'd construct points patiently, and then attack at exactly the right moment. She'd lose a game, reset completely, and show up for the next one as if nothing had happened. That's not something you can fake. That's not something you can perform under pressure if it isn't genuinely who you are. And the crowd felt every single bit of it. Each time she fought her way through a difficult rally, the noise level jumped. Each time she won a point that looked gone, the stadium responded like it was the match point in a Grand Slam final. Those 60,000 people weren't passive observers. They were participants. The energy flowing between them and Alex on that court was a genuine two-way current, and you could feel it affecting the match itself. There's a particular kind of moment that happens sometimes in sport where the environment stops being background and starts being part of the story. This was one of those moments. The match kept building. The tension kept climbing. And through all of it, Alex kept competing with this quality that's honestly hard to put into words. It's somewhere between fearlessness and focus, between controlled aggression and deep calm, between someone who cares enormously about the outcome and someone who isn't going to let caring about the outcome get in the way of actually competing. When the last point was played, when the match finally landed somewhere and the noise in the arena hit its absolute peak, there was this pause, just a second or two, where everything went quiet before the full eruption. And in that pause, you could see Alex standing there processing it, feeling it, letting it be real, what she had just done. Not just in terms of the result, but in terms of what the whole evening had meant, started visibly settling on her. And watching that moment, watching a young athlete absorb the full weight of what she'd just been part of, it hit you right in the chest. Because this wasn't just about a tennis result. It was about the thousands of Filipinos in that stadium who traveled far from home to cheer for one of their own on a stage this big. It was about every young girl watching this on a screen somewhere in the Philippines who now has a different idea of what's possible for someone who looks like her. It was about what it means to a community to see itself represented at the highest level of something, to be able to point at someone and say, that's us. We're here. We belong in this conversation too. The diaspora experience carries a particular emotional weight that's hard to describe if you haven't lived it. When you're far from home, when you're building a life in a country that wasn't where you started, and you see someone from your culture rise to a moment this large, it does something to you. It connects you to something. It reminds you of who you are and where you come from in the best possible way. And that's why those fans weren't just cheering for a tennis player. They were cheering for themselves, for their families, for the version of the future they're working toward. Alex gave them a night where all of that feeling had somewhere to go. And what she gave to the young players watching, the kids with rackets and dreams, and maybe some doubt about whether someone from their country could really make it at this level, what she gave them is genuinely invaluable. She made the dream more visible. She made the path feel more real, not by giving a speech, not by posting an inspirational message, but by walking onto a court in Stuttgart, Germany, competing at an elite level under enormous pressure, and refusing to be anything less than completely herself. That's how legacies actually begin, not with announcements, with moments, with performances that crack something open and let a new kind of possibility through. Stuttgart didn't know what was coming that morning, but by the time it was over, the city had been part of something it'll probably talk about for years. An atmosphere it didn't expect, a crowd it couldn't have prepared for, and a young athlete who turned one of its stadiums into the loudest, proudest, most alive place in European tennis that night. 60,000 voices chanting one name. A city transformed for one unforgettable evening. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, a 20-year-old from the Philippines standing in the center of a court, realizing that everything she worked for in all those early mornings when nobody was watching has led exactly here. This is Alex's story, and it is nowhere near finished.